walking very poorly because I twisted my knee. I don't think it's a permanent condition. Those that are concerned about an old
well,
I want to say this before we start. One, thank you for coming. To have people interested in something you did so many years ago does make you feel good. And I never say this kind of thing, but I really love this movie.
We all do, and you know, it's quite a reaction for a movie that, you know, I remember years ago when I first met you and I used to interrogate you about this movie on a regular basis. The common thread in all your stories was that the studio hated this movie, did not believe in it, and, you know, all these years later, I don't think, you know, what other movies, I'm sure Paramount had all kinds of other movies in 1979 that nobody gives a shit about, and, you know, almost 40 years later, you've got a theater full of people still loving The Warriors.
Well, they hated the movie, they hated me, and they had some pretty good reasons probably, but they really didn't like the movie. They refused to send it out to be reviewed. They thought the movie would be so terribly reviewed that it would be just crushed. And they were embarrassed by the film. And I don't know, you know, here we are, and they're not here.
Well, it's funny because in preparing for tonight, I was researching some of the other movies that came out around the same time, and this movie opened on the same day as a bunch of movies with big stars like Agatha with Dustin Hoffman and Quintet with Paul Newman, and you creamed all of them. Warriors was the #1 movie, this movie that Paramount didn't believe in. But I'm curious, if Paramount didn't like the movie so much, how did you even get them to finance it in the first place? Because you weren't that proven as a director yet. I don't even know if The Driver had come out when you started this.
Well, I had a great producer, Larry Gordon.
Yeah.
Who, he was here tonight, he's in New York. And one of the secrets of getting this movie made was we were going to do a Western, and then it got canceled at the last minute. The Driver was in the can, and for some reason, The Driver had good word of mouth around town. And the first film, Hard Times, had done quite well. So, although I was, you know, still fairly new to directing, I was kind of in good shape for this, you know, this few moments. And Larry seized the day. When the finance crapped out on the Western, that was attributed not to me or anything. It was because it was a Western. They never want to make Westerns. And so he, and also, Paramount had a big hit with a movie about young people from Brooklyn, Saturday Night Fever. So they thought that this was going to be something fun. This may account for some of their fury, what they got. They didn't understand, you know, well, this is, I don't want to overly milk this. They gave me a chance to make the movie, and we made the movie, and in that sense, I'm very appreciative. And,
yes, thank you all.
You know, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things about it that's so great is the cast, and you know, it was mostly, I guess everybody in it pretty much was unknown at the time, which is another thing that is surprising that Paramount would let you do. Was there any fight about that? Did they want you to put anybody in it that was a name or anything like that?
I don't remember, you know, if we could have found people that were very well known, I think maybe they would have thought that was terrific or something, but there weren't many around. We were trying to make a very low budget movie. The cast, splendid as they were, you know, they had to be in really good shape, and just went out night after night. It was very tough. And they never, I mean, they were just great. They never complained. They weren't making a nickel. I remember James Remar almost got blown up one night when that car thing. And, he should have sued the production. $50 million. I think Frank Marshall gave him a $50 adjustment. I remember yelling at Frank about it. But the cast was great. I don't think they ever complained about anything. And they had to, they stuck, I think, like 4 of them in a dressing room each, and night after night. It was tough. And they were wonderful.
How difficult was it logistically shooting in New York, basically all nights?
Well, I think, there's something about when you work night after night after night, maybe it's me, but I think really it's all of us, that you get kind of punchy and crazy. I think that maybe accounts for some of the, I don't know, fevered quality of the movie. You just, it's like you're swimming underwater or something, and it became a world of its own. Usually you're making a movie, but you're part of the real world in some way. And in that one, it seemed that it was just collapsed in the hotel at 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. or something, and then you got up and had a quick meal and went to the set, and that's all there was. And it took it. We through several incredibly inaccurate projections, we ended up way over schedule, and we had some. Well, it was a very rainy summer. The summer of what the hell was it? 78, I guess. Was a very wet summer, so we got rained out. I think a lot of the movie you see is an outdoor film. We only had one cover set, and that was the disc jockey. And we shot that out in one day, the rest of the time. And but the big thing was we were California guys, I mean, the decision makers, and we were used to California, and the nights are much shorter in New York, and also the New York contract at that time. The crew got an hour lunch, and in New York they usually just go off to a restaurant, and we didn't cater for most of the movie, for much of the movie, and by the time everybody got back from finding the restaurant at 2 a.m. and everything, it lost so much time. So anyway, every movie has its story, right? But and I had a wonderful cameraman, Andy Laszlo, and as crazy as I would get, he'd figure out a way maybe to get it all crazier, and he had a great time. He was a big, strong man. He was Hungarian, well, he was American, but he was born in Hungary and fought in the Second World War. He was quite a guy, and I did 3 movies, I think, with Andy, and I'd have done more if I could have, but working out availabilities is always tricky.
Well, the next movie we're going to watch after this is Streets of Fire, which we also shot. And before I open it up to the audience, I wanted to ask you a question about that, because I'm always fascinated by directors' carte blanche movies, the movies they make when they're coming off a hit and can do whatever the hell they want. And Streets of Fire was kind of your carte blanche movie. You would make 48 Hours. It was a big commercial and critical success. And was Streets of Fire something that you had? I feel like it's kind of like Walter Hill's greatest hits. It's got all the stuff in it that you love. Is it something you had been thinking about doing for a long time, or how did it come up?
Well, it's a long time ago. I'm not sure I could. There's a lot of bloodshed and alcohol under the bridge. think the feeling was that Larry Gross and I, while we were working on 48 Hours, there was a feeling about the Warriors, that the Warriors had stumbled into a kind of a non-traditional way of storytelling. It's the fevered atmosphere, the dream world kind of. And could we do something in that vein that was more musically? When you see the Warriors, I mean, you guys have just seen it. Yeah. You know, much of this movie, I've praised the photography, and I've certainly praised the acting. A lot of what makes this movie work, and I really do think it does work, is the music. Yeah. You know, the people that contributed to the music. I've got a long, funny story about Joe Walsh, but I won't tell it. It takes too long. But, the Joe Walsh song. I didn't really know Joe, but the last day of the dub, the song came in. We kept hearing this from Barry Dvorzan, who's a wonderful guy. He's very excitable. He kept saying, Joe Walsh is doing a song for us. Joe Walsh is going to do this song for us. I know Joe Walsh. There was never any evidence of Joe Walsh. Joe Walsh, in 1978, it was like you were talking about Elvis or something. I mean, it was, and still, it's not that he's in decline or something, but, and we just, we were this little tiny movie hanging onto the edge of the lot, and we kept waiting, and he was going to do the song for free. It was just, and so we had some other music queued up, and the last day of the dub, we were doing the last reel, and it was like a movie. Dvorzan burst through the door, says, I've got it. And he was holding up this little cassette. Joe was working all night. We were working together all night. Up in Santa Barbara, I drove 150 miles an hour. So we put it, everything was on the big reels. They transferred, put it on the big reels in the back, and synced it up, gave it a star mark. And we sat there and we listened to the song, it gets picture. And so then the lights go up. And everybody turns and looks at me. This is the director's job, right? And I said, well, it's not really right. It's a West Coast kind of song, and it's a New York movie. And everybody's like, oh, God. and then I said, but it's a great song. So. Well, I was kind of teasing, but it's nice to make people a little uncomfortable.
So Streets of Fire was basically you wanted to sort of develop that language you
Oh, sorry, yeah, we drifted. Yeah, that was the idea. And by the time the movie was criticized, by the time the movie came out, it was criticized for being too MTV. And when we started the script, it wasn't no such thing. I don't know, I read someplace that it was an unclassifiable movie. That is it a musical? Is it an action story? Is it a science fiction story? Futuristic? Retro? What is it? And there's over the years there's kind of a body of literature. I never answer any questions, so that keeps everybody from writing. I'm not sure I know any of the answers to that. I always kind of thought it was more of a musical than anything, but I thought it was a musical with guns, and that kind of made it different.
Well, the last thing I want to ask you about it before I open up to the audience is, that one of the many great character performances in Streets of Fire is by Bill Paxton, who you, of course, worked with later on Trespass, and we're going to do a tribute to here from Cinematheque. I was wondering if you could talk for a few minutes about what it was like working with Bill.
Well, I was just at Bill's Hildy and I were just at Bill's memorial service out of Warner's 2 weeks ago. It's hard. I mean, you know, he was a good friend. I think I knew Bill for 35 years, something like that. He was an amazing guy. He was, you know, when you pass away, everybody's a great person, but Bill really was. He was an extraordinary personality. He had this ability. If you didn't see him for a year and a half, man, it was suddenly, hey, buddy, how are you? You know, and it was just like you had seen him yesterday, and everything just picked up and carried on. He played co-lead in the movie I did. He was, I knew his father. His father worked for me on Last Man Standing. He became an actor at the age of 75, I think, something like that. Bill was, you know, he was a very smart guy. He was, I mean, not a lot of people know this. He was an expert on contemporary art. He bought, traded, sold. He got that from his father. I used to tease him. His father was a lumberman in Fort Worth, Texas. Not what we usually think of as the spawning ground of great art appreciation, but that's because we're snobs. And he was eternally good-humored, and he had that kind of anxiety thing that he would project in a movie. He was very pleasant to work with. He'd get nervous sometimes, but he was very pleasant. And he loved to tell stories about people. He'd tell them about me if I wasn't around. He actually did. He used to, I always thought it was more like Bill. In fact, that in Trespass, when Bill Sadler was killed, he's been fighting with the whole movie and disagreeing with it. Bill Sadler was killed, and he stumbles across, Bill Paxton stumbles across Sadler's body. We rehearsed it, and suddenly Bill was going, oh my God. And I said, I went over and I said, Bill, Christ, it's not like Lincoln died. He never let me forget this pearl of direction. I have to tell you, it was probably not my finest moment. It was, you know, you reach a point on a movie where you just have to kind of make your point. Big way you're trying to get the thing done and get out of there. I'll miss him. Everything. You know, he was a special guy.
I want to open up for a couple questions in the audience. Yes, up in the back.
Can you talk about casting Amy Madigan in Streets of Fire?
Yeah, the part was written for a guy, a Latino, and Eddie almost came in and he said, you know, this thing's shit. He said, you've got every kind of cliche for a Latino guy, and I don't want to do that. But I just want to tell you, you know, it's not written very well. So that was, and then Amy came in about a day later, and Eddie was quite right, by the way. I couldn't quite see it then, but Amy came in, I think, about a day later, and she said, I know you're not going to let me play the singer and the lead, even though I'm a hell of a singer. But she said, why don't you rewrite the sidekick, make it a girl, that'd be a little different. And she left, and I thought it was a great idea. And so I did, and we called her, and she came back, and she's wonderful in the movie. And she was another one. She's a real pistol. It was, you know, a lot of fun to work with. She's a very fine actress, really. She caught the spirit. I don't think she ever really had a problem understanding what we were trying to do. Some of the cast I think did, but she didn't. And performance and strength of performance, I think is one of the best things you can do. I agree.
Gosh, yes.
There was word about supposed sequel to Warriors set in LA that was supposed to be directed by Tony Scott. Were you aware or did you have any involvement?
I'll repeat it just in case people in the back couldn't hear. The questions about the alleged remake of The Warriors that Tony Scott was supposed to direct. Did you have any involvement or awareness of that when it was going on?
I had no involvement. I used to read about it. I used to get reports from Larry Gordon. And Larry would call me and say, "Did you see the latest?" God damn it. They think they're going to remake it. And so I was never part of it. I was never asked. I was never. There was a lot of energy. I know they wanted to remake it mainly for the music tie-ins. The movie's always been popular in the music community, and they wanted to tie it into contemporary music over the 12-year period. And they developed an enormous amount of, Larry would again, they spent 5 times as much money on scripts as we did to make the movie. And so they never kind of looked so obvious. Even in the dream world that the Warriors set in, the gang situation is so totally changed. They couldn't make a contemporary movie with the same narrative issues that the movie you just saw has. So it was kind of a hopeless situation, I think, for them. But it had nothing to do with me. I always said the same thing. Good luck.
Yes.
Yes. Back in 2005, Rockstar released, a video game of the Warriors, and I was wondering if you're familiar with it by any chance at all.
Are you familiar with the video game of The Warriors?
No, I'm not. I don't even know how to. I didn't know how to plug them in and work them. You guys think I'm kidding? I don't. I am an object of ridicule to my children. You use PlayStations, isn't that right? I don't know. I don't know anything about it. I was told that to game people, it was a disappointment.
Oh, no.
I don't know if that's true.
Loved it.
People may have been trying to make me feel good.
Thanks for being here, and thank you guys for listening to this again. This is pretty awesome. You were on the JLA this morning, and this is about the assignment, but I kind of want to parallel it a little bit with Warriors, by the way, which is a movie that I put on whenever I get homesick, because that's the Bronx I grew up in. That's the movie I grew up in. It's so accurate, it's incredible. I mean, but it's really cool. Anyway, so this morning on the JLA, you correct one of the hostesses that said that the assignment was transgender movie, and I was interested.
And I said it wasn't.
Yeah, you said you definitely defined that it wasn't, for the emotional reasons and everything, and then it's unfortunate, but a couple of years ago, you were targeted by Vlad for this movie and for rather for the assignment. And the other thing about parallel to this, seeing something as the scene in the living room again with the women and how they were like a gang and they were flirting with each other, that was just so out of this world, so ahead of its time, that I just kind of want to understand then what the basis for the whole Vlad thing was. And also I used to work with Gilardi, and I have a
Okay.
I guess the question is about the controversy.
We never got to shoot the sequence. There was a gay gang, and the studio, when we got over budget, cut them out. But it was going to be rather sympathetic to the gay gang, although they were real tough, and they threw our hero into jeopardy. But in the end, these other. And I was always sad that we didn't get a chance to do that sequence, because I think it would have done a little more, would have rounded the movie off a little more. But you're quite right. There's a kind of humor about the girl, the Lizzies, and I don't, you know, in theory, everybody will jump up out of their seats and get in a fist fight because they watch the Warriors. So when you watch the movie, I always think it's so funny. You know, there's laughs and good jokes. I mean, it's an adventure and all that. But anyway, I'm rambling. Sorry?
What was that game called?
The Lizzies.
No, the one that's in there.
Oh, they were the dingoes.
Okay, unfortunately, I've been given the signal that we only have time for one more question before we watch Streets of Fire, so let's see. Who looks like they've got a really good one? Yes, sir. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Well, all right, we'll do two. Go ahead, you and then the question's about the re-edit you did of the Warriors for DVD.
Yes, not everybody was happy with that. I didn't re-edit it. The only thing I did was I added the comic panels, and we digitally restored some shots that had deteriorated. So we improved a little of Andy's photography from the original negative. That was the only thing that changed. We didn't re-edit it. And the reason I did the comic book thing is that's what I wanted to do then. And the idea was that possibly, because there was still a lot of interest in the movie, that people might want to see what the director had in mind to have done then had he not had all these fights with the studio. So, but a lot of people liked the original release version better than that version. Better than they called it a director's cut. It's really not a director's cut. And some of the narration at the start's different. You know, Orson Welles was going to do that, and the studio didn't want Orson Welles. You can understand how maybe I get a little excited in these meetings. They used my voice in the newer version when it came out with the comic panel. But when people say they much prefer the original version, which a lot of people do, I think that's fine. I don't have any problem with that. I just think it's nice to see maybe what might have been. It wouldn't have been exactly that way because the comic art would have been different. And let's face it, I am no Orson Welles. So that would have been different.
Well, unfortunately, I'm going to signal we got to wrap it up for Streets of Fire, but I want to thank you so much for coming out and talking about this video.